Should we abolish the electoral threshold? This is a policy that I have promoted in the past, and it has obvious appeal. It would make the parliament a more accurate representation of the vote. It would empower third parties. It would give voters more choice. It would make the electoral system more competitive. This reform has obvious benefits, but it also has some serious shortcomings. Abolishing the electoral threshold would arguably make the system less democratic. Our proportional system gives minor parties disproportionate political influence. They possess massive leverage as coalition partners. I do not want some deranged party that only has 2% of the vote wielding massive power. A minuscule party could exploit their leverage. They could hold the country hostage and hijack the government. They could implement an agenda despised by the vast majority. They could accumulate powerful cabinet positions. There is nothing democratic about that. We must not forget that proportional electoral systems provide proportional representation, not proportional influence. So a lower electoral threshold is not necessarily more democratic. I do not want a person who is despised by 99% of the population occupying a powerful government position through a coalition agreement. This is the only downside of mixed-member proportional. Mixed-member proportional is a lot better than first-past-the-post, but it is not perfect. The electoral threshold helps to alleviate the system's flaws. Of course, it could be argued that a deranged tiny party would never get that amount of influence because nobody would be willing to work with them. It is hard to say how accurate this assessment is. Would the major right-wing parties be willing to form an alliance with a major left-wing party instead? Would the major left-wing parties be willing to form an alliance with a major right-wing party instead? It is hard to say, but deep-rooted party divides can be hard to overcome, and parties can pay a heavy price for abandoning them. It could be argued that no matter the electoral consequence, we should abolish the threshold because it is the right thing to do. In some abstract sense, it makes the country more democratic. This is another argument that could be employed here. Some also worry that letting deranged minor parties into parliament could destroy the prestige of the institution. It could become little more than a platform for fringe extremists to spout their stupidity. Of course, this is not ideal. It creates division and chaos. It damages the legitimacy of the institution. But some might say this is a small price to pay for democracy. And the best safeguard against such things is not a legal restriction, but instead simply convincing people to not vote for idiots. It can also be argued that giving fringe idiots some representation can actually be a good thing. Perceptions of helplessness and powerlessness can be very destructive. They can cause extremists to become more violent. They can cause extremists to become more extreme. Sometimes giving people a voice can encourage them to moderate their views. The same could be said about forming a coalition. An extremist may become more moderate in order to participate in a coalition. So it is not clear whether a lower electoral threshold would empower extremists or reduce extremism. Should we abolish the electoral threshold? This is a difficult question. Personally, I no longer want to abolish the threshold, but I do want to reduce it. We could reduce it to 3% or even 4%. This would empower third parties while still providing some safeguard to prevent a minuscule minority from hijacking the government. This middle ground approach is my preference at present. This is a very complex issue. What do you think? I invite you to share your thoughts in the comment section.